Hey y'all,
What's going on, everyone?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris the Birdner,
and we
and
are
we are
the
the
Bird Brains.
Birdbrains.
That sounded good.
Yeah, it's all right.
All right, I've had enough of technology this week, let me tell you. Um, so Chris, why don't you pop that beanie off? Let's see what's going on here.
I don't know if anyone's noticed in any of my other videos, but I lost a bet to my beautiful wife. I I bet that the Kansas City Chiefs would lose. This was about 2 weeks ago, and I obviously lost that bet since they're playing in the Super Bowl this Sunday. And it was either shave my head or bleach my hair. And since I'm already going bald, eventually I'll get there. Uh, my wife and kids had a really fun time bleaching my hair, and my work has had a really fun time making fun of me. My nickname is now Sunshine or Justin Timberlake because they think I'm trying to bring back the old school NSYNC days of bleached hair. So, but
You know,
I'm owning up to it, and it looks really awful on a nearly 40-year-old man with bleached hair. But it is what it is.
that's how I went bald. I
Oh,
had a
great! I'm just speeding up the
I had
process.
I had a full head of hair and then I bleached it one time and there it went. No, that's not true. I am very lucky that I'm ineligible for that bet. I could dye my three remaining top of
Just
head
said it.
hairs.
You got a solid beard, man. We could,
Uh,
we could get some different colors going there.
I'm fine. Everything's good.
Yeah, it was
How long is
good.
it gonna stay like that?
I mean, we're getting close to haircut time again, so it's I usually don't let my hair grow too long, so it's every 3 to 4 weeks is usually when my wife cuts my hair for me, and so she'll cut and it may have a little bit of a yellow at the very ends of the hair, but I think it'll be mostly gone here in a couple weeks. So
Oh
I did
man.
do a. I'm trying to think. I think my last video I just had my hair combed. So, but I haven't. I don't think anybody's noticed it. At least no one's commented on it, or they're just like, "What the heck did he do to his hair?" So it was
Earlier
not voluntary. So
we're going on Robin Sullivan, the Leather Elves. We're going on her live stream on Friday to talk about something cool. And we had to send in, pictures of us that she's going to use as her teaser. And I did think like, oh man, Chris looks a little weird, but I didn't. I mean, I guess
didn't
good
put
for
two and two
me.
together.
I didn't like check you out hard enough. I was like, that's kind of weird. Maybe it's the lighting or something. But I didn't know. I did not put put
I'm
that together. Which, by the way, you're like, that's so dumb because everybody knows it's rigged for the Chiefs.
Oh, I know. It was just one of those that we were making light of the moment, and my wife was brave enough. Her end of the bargain was to cut her hair. My wife's got beautiful long hair, and actually I've never seen her with short hair, and so I was like, hey, like if you lose, I want you to cut your hair, and she was like, okay, I'll take you up on that, but I got the short end of the stick, so.
Yeah, I don't think she was that brave. She had the Chiefs. She had
So yeah.
The Chiefs and the referees.
She in the back of her head was like, "This sucker, I've already got him in my pocket. We're good.
Yeah,
Let's do it."
this is not. You know what? This is kind of bird related, right? Because they're playing the Eagles, which,
Yeah,
by the way, that's just University of Georgia North now. Half that team is Georgia Bulldogs.
they are. Yeah,
Yeah,
they really are.
so go Birds. But no, I've got a cousin that lives in Philly, and we've been talking about it. I sent him a video today that I saw online. And it was a bunch of people there interviewing Chiefs fans and then Phillies fans. And hey, what are you going to do if you win? And the Chiefs fans are like, oh, I'm going to cry. I'm going to drink some beer with my buddies. And then the first Eagles fan is like, going to find a Jeep Cherokee and light it on fire, whether we win or lose. And then it just like gets south from there. It's just like,
I love it.
whether Philadelphia wins or loses, it's going to be World War III downtown. They have to grease
Yeah,
the street poles there to keep people from climbing up them and jumping off. So
yeah. Philly's got some intense fans. So if you guys are Philly fans that are watching, kudos to you guys. Hopefully, your boys, your team will bring some
Yeah.
extra power to go against the Chiefs and the refs. So
If uh if you're sitting this watching this and you're a Chiefs fan, then good for you. But yeah, I would root for almost anybody
yeah,
against the
and
Chiefs.
Utah's got obviously got some strong ties and connections to Coach Andy Reid, with him being a Utah native, and so you got a
Mhm.
lot of Utahns that are rooting for the Chiefs. I usually always tend to root for the underdog naturally, and I'm not saying the Eagles are underdogs; they got a solid team, but I'm rooting for the Eagles. The Chiefs have had their glory. Let's let someone else bask in it. So
Well, and they're birds. We're the Birdbrains
yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah, I have a
100%.
green bird right here off camera. He'll probably wander over at some point. I gotta root for the
You need to
birds.
put like a little like Eagles and Chiefs chew toy, and whichever one he chooses first, that's the winner.
Oh, I should. That'd be a good little Instagram this week. I should
Yeah,
let
that'd be
let
fun.
uh let Einstein do a prediction. I feel like those always do well. People have like their dumb little corgi do it or whatever.
Uh huh.
So
Yeah, I
I could
like that.
rig it. I could rig it too, just like the NFL probably is going
Well,
to.
if he chooses the Eagles, just throw in a yellow flag in the cage to Einstein, and maybe it'll scare him towards the other end, and then either way, you're all right. So,
Yeah, I'll probably have an NFL referee show up at my house and give me a 15-yard penalty.
yeah,
But all right. So not green, but red, which Einstein also has some red. There's your
yeah.
segue. Today we're going to talk about sort of the opposite of a fierce giant eagle. We are going to talk about what may be the most gentle, placid bird that I've ever kept.
Yes.
Um, they are beautiful, beautiful birds. They are really cool. They are also getting rarer and rarer, or more rare and more rare in
By the
U.S.
day.
aviculture. Um,
Yeah.
so this is going to be a little bit instructional, but maybe more of a love letter because the odds of anybody here watching this breeding this species is probably pretty low at this point. It kind of breaks my heart, but we're working on it. We've got some good
Yeah.
news on this.
Yeah.
Um, but today we are going to talk about the red billed fire finch.
The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains.
All right, before we talk about the fire finch, Chris, let's do a little New Zealand plug. Let me grab my stuff. I got a
Yeah.
box full.
Let's do that.
Let's see
Kind of
what I can come up with. Oh, I know about these things.
what you getting?
This is
Kind of like
super,
Christmas.
yeah, it's super professional of me to just walk away from the camera and dig in a box.
Yeah, me too.
That's right. I'm not even getting paid by YouTube right now. It's a long story, so I'm
Oh
less
yeah, that's
concerned.
that's perfect what you got there.
Yeah, so fire finches like nests that are tucked back inside plants and
Yes.
shrubbery. They like to be hidden, and if you can combine the actual nest with that, then you are one step ahead of the game. This is probably, I think, the coolest woven nest I've ever had.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I'm very interested to see. I mean, if I had to guess, by the end of the breeding season, all of this will be removed.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
think? You think
if you've got any zebra finches in there, they'll go to town on it. Your Borks would probably love to chew on it a little bit, but
the spice
if
finches too?
the spice finches too, if you do a good job, and fire finches are a shy bird when it comes to breeding. So if you've got that hidden up in a bush, kind of secluded, out of sight from the other birds, it may last the breeding season. But as soon as the other birds find it, yeah, they're gonna have fun with
Yeah,
it.
and
But
I think underneath it. still looks like this one. So I think they can
Yeah,
remove the accoutrement and it'll still work great.
yeah.
But these are for a lot of your Africans and a lot of your Asian
Hmm.
species, these are great options. You have, your classic nest box too, but a lot of your birds that are more used to like a jungly environment, they will
Yes,
go for these. The downside
absolutely.
is they typically don't last as long, but
Yeah,
these are also preview and they are really well made compared to some of the. I mean, I'm squeezing this pretty hard with my hand and nada. And this
yeah,
one even comes with a like a cage hook if you wanted,
yes,
which I've
yep,
never seen on one of these before. So I mean, that's pretty fancy.
yeah. And I will say, Jay, with the African finch species, Uh, that is the preferred type of nest, right? They like the wicker baskets, the ones that you can hide and seclude. They're a little bit more enclosed, smaller. So, um, the word of caution that I give is always make sure their nails are trimmed. A lot of your African waxbills, their nails grow really quick and they can get entangled in those nests. So, before breeding season, before you introduce these nests to your birds, make sure their nails are nice and trimmed to avoid their nails getting caught in there and injuring their legs in any way. But that is their preferred nest, so it's not like you can just go use something else. I mean, I would still go to these nest boxes or nest baskets really, and use those as my primary option for a lot of the waxbills, including the firefinch, as their go-to, their initial go-to.
Yeah, and I've had before we get fully into it, use code Birdbrains, get
Yeah.
10% off. There's the Birdbrains perch box. There's
I'm
all
getting
kinds
some
of
different supplements, minerals, charcoal, things that your birds need and enjoy. Yeah, go
New
check them out.
Zealand, the Parchville section of their website, one-stop shop for everything you need for this breeding season we're all about to hopefully be in. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, so I've also had some success with them with my mason jar nest, which hop over to my
Yeah.
channel. I've
Yeah.
got a video on it. I'll probably do another one because that reminds me, I need to order some more mason jars to I always end up the couple junkiest ones from last year I end up tossing. So I always need to get a few more. Um, but so if you're going to breed red-billed fire finches from a pair standpoint, pretty easy to do because the males are bright red and
Yep.
I'll put some pictures in here, but the males are bright red and the females are gray with like yellow spots. Both very beautiful birds, very obviously sexually dimorphic. Um, so that, you have your pair, that's pretty easy. The the nest box placement is a hard thing, but they've got to have somewhere secluded, typically like under something, like under a ledge or in some bushes, those kinds of things. Just out in
Yep.
the open on the side of a cage is not going to
Right.
be what they would prefer. And then as far as nesting material, they like the coconut fiber, they like the burlap strands, and then they do a lot of lining with feathers.
Feathers. Yep.
Yeah.
Really
So
nice soft feathers.
so I found two ways to do feathers. One way is during the molting season, I'll save a lot of that leftover down and just in Ziploc bags for the breeding season. Just spray it with some mite spray just in case, and then store it. And then the other thing I do is I buy like hobby arts and crafts feathers and cut them into
Yep.
smaller pieces.
Hmm.
But they are, your firefinches are big into feathers in the nest. So those are
And
important
many
things.
times what they'll do with that, once they got the nest built and lined with the really soft feathers, many times they'll find a big feather. So you get those big feathers from Hobby Lobby, and they'll cover the entrance
Right?
of
They make like a
the
door.
nest. Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah.
So it just kind of hides them a little bit more. And these birds, Jay, they're little. They they really are beautiful. There's not very many birds in the world that are all red. I mean, there's a small handful, and like you said, sexually dimorphic. They tend to, they're a kind of bird. They're not a big, long flighted bird, meaning they don't love to just be in the open, making long, distant flights like your zebra finches or things like that. They are more of a thicker bush or grassland type bird that is hopping along the branches, short, quick hops and flights. That's what they tend to like. Like you said, nesting in the nice bushy areas where they can be secluded. I've got a few breeders that I know that have bred fire finches successfully. I've had some success in the past as well, but the most successful ones are the pairs that have a really secluded nest box that's in a bunch of fake plants. The entrance hole is away from any person that can just peek into it, right? You'd have to like go out of your way to be able to see into that nest, and it just provides that additional privacy and helps encourage them to breed better for you and more successfully in captivity.
Yeah, and so a couple more things here. So they are extremely prone to egg binding.
Yes.
It seems to be mostly temperature related. Um, they we'll talk more about it in a minute, but they're really rare in aviculture. The hens especially are just priceless.
Yeah.
Um, and mine are out on breeding loan with our friend Alex, who's been on the show
Yep.
before. But I had somebody offer me $2,000 for my hens once, and I said no. Probably should have said yes. Honey, if you see this, I'm sorry. But um, they it seems to me that if you get below like 70 degrees Fahrenheit when they're trying
Yep.
to lay, you're gonna find a dead hen in the
Yep.
morning.
You're almost toast.
Yeah, it's really,
It,
really tough. And then they're so
Even if you
small.
provide lots of amounts of calcium in live food, that temperature flux, and where in Utah, Jay, where we get those temperature fluxes quite frequently in spring and fall, it is very dangerous for those
Yeah.
females.
And then they're so small and just fragile and walking that fine line between like totally fine and definitely dead. It's so
Yeah.
narrow for them that it seems to me like they are definitely like the actual getting them to breed and they actually raise their chicks pretty great. I don't think
Yep.
I've had a Firefinch chick hatch that didn't fledge.
Yep.
But get keeping I would put them in like the expert category just because the general like keeping them alive, keeping
Yeah.
everybody happy and fed and comfortable part is so precarious that it's like if
Yeah.
somebody told me like, "Hey, I'm getting into finches, I'm going to start with red-billed fire finches," I
Yeah.
wouldn't even say like, "Don't do that." I'd be mad. Like
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah. And I think I've heard of very few breeders that have successfully reared more than two chicks in a clutch. Uh,
I've only
my
ever done two
I've
in a clutch. I've done
the
that
most
like 6 or 8 times, but
Yeah, the most I've seen is three, and I've only seen it done one time. Many times it's one chick or two chicks, and they're a semi insectivore. Let me put it this way, Jay. They need insects to breed because they are an African finch, but I've been able to breed, and I've seen others been able to successfully breed them on like 50% insects, 50% like freeze-dried bloodworms, things like that, where some of your other African species, if you're not pounding the live food every single day throughout the
mhm.
day, they automatically toss their chicks. Fire finches are a little bit more lenient when it comes to that,
Yeah,
and
I'd agree
and
with that.
don't have as stringent requirements for them to abandon the nest or toss the chicks. So they are easier that way, but it's like you said, Jay, they are a fragile bird, and I think because they're so fragile, we just don't see them in agriculture as much as we have in the past, especially with the imports and exports that don't happen as much anymore, and keeping them in captivity has been a little bit harder. And like you said, there's a lot of extra males around, or if I ever hear of someone that has a fire finch, it's usually a male, which comes back to what you're saying, the fragility of the females, and as a result of that, they're just not as frequent in captivity. But yeah, so a little bit easier on the forgiving side when it comes to breeding with insects or the requirement of insects. Uh, a pretty docile, gentile bird. They're beautiful, man. I love them. When you see them in person for the first time, you're like, holy cow, that finch is so small. They are just teeny tiny. I've had babies that have fledged, and I mean, I've got, the small quarter-inch mesh, and they're sticking their heads through it, and I'm like, crap, are these babies going to be able to fit through the wire? That's how small they are when they first fledge. So
Yeah, I mean
definitely be careful in that area.
their legs are like the same diameter as like a toothpick, probably.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean they're
Yeah.
yeah, and they're not. I mean they're not even the smallest finch I have. I've got red-eared waxbills that are smaller. I've got gold-breasted waxbills that are smaller. I've got I think my bronze wing mannequins, which I've never. This is my first time talking about this on the podcast. I now have bronze wing mannequins. They're about the same size, so they're just.
Yeah.
I mean they're roughly the size of what like a 25-cent gumball. I mean
Yeah.
they're just not that
Yep.
big. And
Yep.
I would also say they are a good bird for a mixed aviary as long
Yeah,
as
totally.
other birds don't pick on them. They are never gonna start a fight, and
Yep.
they are never gonna continue a fight. They are absolutely like a fight or flight. They are flight. They do
Yep.
not.
Yeah.
They don't beef with anybody as long as they're not getting attacked. That you won't have a problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
Go ahead.
No, I was just to add on to that, I would say be careful when if you're breeding them in a mixed flight with like zebra finches, they could take over nests. And sometimes males, if you have two males, two male fire finches in the same flight, they can get territorial. Yes, with the balloons, they can get territorial during breeding season with each other. So what I've heard and what I've experienced is best to keep one pair per flight or per mixed aviary or per cage. That seems to be the best results.
Yeah, and so I did try to keep at one point I did have two full pairs in my aviary and um the one pair just did not breed.
Yeah,
So only the dominant pair will breed if you keep more than one pair, which again and we can get into it. So in the late 2000s all imports from Africa stopped. They were stopped by law. Um, Whether you agree with that or not, it's not really what we're talking about, but they did stop. So all the and this pretty much goes for almost all of our finch species. Really, the only imports we're getting now are from Europe, which is just from other
yeah,
captive populations. And so um as a result, everything we've got to preserve, right? And
right.
so if let's say there were a thousand here when that import ban went into effect. There's probably less than two or three hundred in the whole United States now.
Yeah,
Just because, I mean, I've owned I think six, and I've made eight or ten babies.
hmm,
So, I mean, that's just me personally. So I'm plus four, but then I lost some too. So I mean, it's just
yeah,
it
yeah,
is it is tough to have enough at this point. We're almost, I would say we are probably past the point of no return. We probably will lose this species in U.S. aviculture. And I hate that. I don't want that.
yeah, right.
Um, so our friend Alex, who came on here to talk about his Gouldians about a year ago, um, he has now, and we'll get him on to talk about it. I don't know how much he has had some success, but he's not. He's kind of
Yeah,
the master of specializing in one species or a couple small different species and really getting those dialed in and producing great. And
right.
so we had a conversation before last breeding season that his next big goal was the fire finches. And he said to me, he texted me one day on there. I was like heartbroken when he texted me because I knew I was going to say yes. And he said, "Dude, can you just send me your fire finches? Like I need a good breeding stock to start with." And he'd gotten some from some other places. So he's up to, I don't want to blow up his spot, but he's got some pairs. And he said that, and I was like, yeah, you can. I didn't want to give him up because I love having him, but um, so he's got these big planted cages with one pair per cage, really doing it
That's
right.
awesome.
And
That's awesome.
so, like, those are the kind of decisions I think that this species requires at this point. If somebody told me like, "Hey, can I have all your zebra finches so I can save the species?" I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" I made 50 last year, but uh, with this species in aviculture, we have got to, if you're someone watching this and you're like, "Well, I've only got a hen or I've only got a cockbird or I've had this pair for a year and I can't get them to breed," I would encourage you to reach out to me or
Yeah,
Chris, and we would get
please.
you in touch with Alex, and
Hmm.
we'll come up with a trade or money or something. But we're trying to get these birds into the hands of people that are really experts, can
That are
really,
specializing in them. Yeah.
yes, specialize in them. And then basically I gave my birds to Alex on the promise of like down the road in a year, couple years, whenever that is, when I really get them dialed in, you'll get some back.
Yeah.
And that's just where we're at with these species. So, it's a little bit of a heartbreaking story. On a positive note, they are totally uh prevalent in the wild. They're of least concern on the ICUN red
Right.
list. They are
Right.
doing fine in the wild, which is great. I would still love to be able to have them in captivity. So it's kind of
Yeah.
the opposite of a lot of stories, right? You hear like the Gouldian, almost they're doing better now. They're bouncing back, but they almost went extinct in the wild, but they never came close to extinction
Right.
because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them in captivity, probably several hundred thousand in captivity. But Firefinch is the opposite, and that's a
Yeah.
loss for aviculture. I'd like my kids to be able to have firefinches. So.
Yeah. And speaking of like the Goulian finches, Jay, one thing that helped them in aviculture is fostering. When they first came into captivity, they were a very difficult species to breed, very dependent on insects, and fostering was able to help that. The problem with that, especially when you get into your wax bills, is these finches are really small. So the odds of successfully fostering are cut in half because those babies are half of the size of your typical Bengalese or society finch that are typically your fosters. And so you also have that going against them as well. And I'm not saying just foster out, but that was a key factor in the success of our Lady Gouldian finches in captivity.
And
And
you can't really do it. Yeah.
yeah, not on a massive scale. You may have a society pair here and there that can successfully keep a baby firefinch or a baby cordon bleu alive the first 4 days without squishing them and smothering them just because they're so tiny. But your odds are slim, especially those first few days trying to foster out, and it makes it harder.
I
So
mean,
it's just another thing against them.
when they hatch, you can probably fit two babies on a dime.
Yeah,
I
easily.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they're tiny. So it's a tough species. It's a beautiful species. It's a great species to have in the aviary. I have a lot of faith that Alex is gonna, uh, and then I don't know if the other person we know that has them wants to
Yeah,
people to
yeah.
know,
My
but
my brother, he's got several. He's successfully bred a good amount of fire finches these last couple of years, and is continuing that. And again, so if you guys have any available hens or males that you're looking for homes or anything, we've got a few connections to get get these birds to them so that we can try our best to keep them going, keep them alive, and be able to successfully keep them so that Jay and I's kids, when they're our age, can get their hands on some fire finches in their aviaries.
and
So,
we'll make it worth your while, and we'll probably throw in some Birdbrains merch too.
absolutely, 100%.
But yeah, so. Um, a great species, really beautiful to have in the aviary, gets along well with everybody. Um, Not that difficult to breed from a actual breeding standpoint. Very, very difficult to keep alive. to
Yeah,
keep hens going for multiple seasons, to get through weather issue, whatever it may be. They're almost trying to die, right? So
for sure. Yeah.
so it's kind of a it's like a bittersweet episode, right? So here's this awesome bird. Hopefully we get to keep them.
Yeah, and those that are listening outside of the US, keep those populations strong in captivity where you're at as well. Let us know if you need some additional connections. Jay and we've got quite a few connections even outside of the United States that we could try
Mhm.
and hook you up with if you're looking for these birds or looking to rehome or find some breeders specific to this species. We're always willing and happy to help out as best we can.
Um, let's see. We'll probably have already done it by the time I post this, but this Friday, Chris and I will be on the Leather Elves
Yes.
to discuss a big, uh, both story wise and size wise, surprise. So go ahead and check that out. Even after, if you don't catch it live, it'll still be on her
Yeah.
Facebook, and I'm sure Chris and I will both put it up on
Yeah,
our
we'll
socials.
we'll
And
grab it and throw them up on our socials too. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have heard anything in the background throughout this podcast. She's been pretty quiet, but Jay and I are really excited to showcase this amazing. It's obviously a bird because it wouldn't be Jay and I if it's not a bird. So this amazing bird. So if you guys are able and willing to jump on Friday, and if not, stay tuned
yeah,
as Jay and I will keep you guys in the loop.
7 p.m. Eastern time. Have you ever watched the Dukes of Hazzard?
Uh huh.
Those Duke boys are at it again. Like those bird brain boys are at it again.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Saving
hopefully,
birds one
hopefully not
species
the
at a time.
last big surprise we have this spring. So
Yeah, I
um,
agree.
lots of cool stuff coming down the pike. This is episode 71.
Wow.
Can't believe we're
Cruising,
there.
man. Holy
Um,
cow.
Loved every minute of it. Really appreciate y'all for listening and watching and doing what you do.
Yeah.
Go to New Zealand, use code Birdbrains, get you 10% off,
Yes, please.
and we will catch you in the next one.
Yeah. See you guys.